Right, well, welcome back to another web development video where I show you how to make modern websites using HTML5, CSS3, and a little bit of JavaScript. In this video, I want to show you how to create this sticky animated header. And I was going to make it animated. I think we're just going to go with a sticky header. It's sort of hard to explain, but I was looking on the cbs.com website, and whenever you move down, you can see that there's an animation that happens here at this level, and it moves it all up, and then it makes this bottom section here. This is a separate section. So it could be like a page title, which is what it is here, or something else. And you can see that it stops up there and hides the full control, sort of gives you a minimalist type of look. So I thought maybe we could try to recreate that in some way. And so in this video I'm going to show you how to do that with this split header here. You can see we have a top and we have a bottom, and then there's a little bit of information in each of those. And then we're also going to have a main so that we can make the page go down so it forces it to scroll. And what we're going to do is we're going to use on this bottom, in order to make it stick to the top, we're going to use a relatively new CSS property called position sticky. And position sticky used to only work in Firefox, but now it works. It's actually pretty universal. So let's see. You can see that it doesn't work in IE 11, but it does work across all these major browsers. So, you know, anything Internet Explorer related. There's partial support in Chrome and Opera on the mobile, but on the desktop, you know, it's almost universally supported. So there are some known bugs and things like that for it, but we're using it in its sort of base we're using it in its base form. So if we look here, let's see what Mozilla says about support. Okay, so for just the regular position, so the sticky only has a couple of Edge, Internet Explorer, they haven't quite put that on there. Safari on iOS, maybe it's in progress. You can see with the vendor prefix, it's supported here. If you're using it on table elements, that's where you're going to get a little bit of issue there. So what we're going to use is we're going to use the position sticky. And the worst thing that's going to happen is that when the person scrolls, it doesn't stick to the top. So there's not a lot of downsides here necessarily. It's sort of a progressive enhancement. We could even use an @supports if we wanted to. So what we need to do is style this just a little bit. First thing we're going to say is top and bottom. Let's just give it a padding of like 1 rem, just to sort of separate them out from one another. And we're going to make these different colors so that we can see each one of them. So let's make the top one red, and let's make bottom pink, just to be able to tell them apart from one another. And then for our main, we are going to set a height of, let's say, like 150 viewport heights. So just so that we have to scroll a little bit. We could stop there, but I want to show you a transparency on this pink one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm also going to make this have a background image. And the URL, let's just grab one. That's a good one. Okay, so now we have this background image. Let's just shape that up a little bit. So the size is going to be cover, and the position is going to be center. So that sort of shapes up our background a little bit. And now you can see when we scroll, this is the normal action that we would expect. Excuse me. This is the normal action that we would expect. So everything is relatively positioned, and when you scroll down, it all moves together. What we want is for this to move up when we scroll, but we want this, once the top edge hits up here, to stay, and then the rest of it continues to scroll as well. So the way that we need to do that is that we need to add something, a class. We're just going to call this sticky, and whenever bottom, so in SAS you would say when the two classes are together like this, you would say bottom and the ampersand and then whatever your class is. We want that to be position sticky. And when you use position sticky, you also need to say, is it going to stick to the bottom or is it going to stick to the top? So sort of, it's like a relatively positioned absolute element. So it's a little bit different and tricky. But if we put top 0, then as soon as this gets to 0, this element, the top of it gets to 0, then it's going to be sticky. And hopefully it'll show right here. So you can see there. You see that as soon as that element gets to the top of the window and the scroll position is 0, then it's going to be position sticky. So that is exactly what we want. To be quite honest, we can just take this here and we can put it right on this element, because it's not going, it doesn't need to happen. It needs to happen when it happens. It needs to happen when this element gets to 0. So if all you want is a sticky element, you just have to put it right on the property itself. You don't need a special sticky class. I'm creating this class because I want to also create, you see when we go over this, it's opaque. So I want to create just a little bit of, a little hint, and you can see it here where you can see that it's a little bit translucent. So I wanted to recreate that a little bit and put an opacity on there. And for that we're going to need a little bit of JavaScript in order to do that, because we just need to add this sticky class once the user gets to a certain place. So either when this gets to the top, or as soon as we start scrolling, it's okay to add that class, because you know, when you, that's just one scroll, so that's just one. So by the time you get down there, you don't want it to have to wait, do a bunch of extra logic. So we'll just say that anytime it's not 0, we're going to add that opacity, and then when it goes back up to 0, then the opacity will be 1. So hopefully that makes sense. But what we need to do is we need to just put the actual opacity property on here, and we're going to say 0.7, which should be fine. So you can see that you can see through it a little bit, maybe 8. There's 8. So you can see through the background, but it still allows us to see through to our text here. Okay. Alright, so that's when it's on here. We've applied it manually, but what we want to do is programmatically put that sticky class on there. So for that we need to come down to our JavaScript. Now I'm going to use jQuery. I already have it set up in my JavaScript here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a window scroll function. So what we do is we say window dot scroll, and then when the window scrolls, we're going to run this function, whatever's inside here, and it won't fire until the window scrolls. So if something happens, then we're going to do this. And what we want to say is if the window scroll top is greater than 0, then we want to do whatever's in here. Then we want to take our bottom, and that's the name of our element on the bottom, and we want to add the class of sticky. Else, so if the window scroll top is 0, then we want to do this other thing. Sorry. Then we want to remove the class of sticky. So when we scroll all the way back up to the top, we get rid of the class, and this is all just opaque. As soon as we get to 1, as soon as we begin to scroll, you can see it change there. You see how, watch the pink, it changes color just a little bit. And we can see that it's opaque, or that's translucent there. But right there, it's fully opaque. Okay? And I want that to actually happen over time. I don't want that to happen so quickly. You can see how quickly it changes right there, right? I want it to sort of gradually change over time. And we can actually use what's called the transition property for that. This is sort of a low-level animation property. So when we go from, in our case, opacity is what we're going to transition. We're going to transition from opacity of 1, which is where it is here, to an opacity of 0.8. And we're going to do that over a certain length of time. And so let's choose the opacity property. That's the one that we want to transition. And then we need to decide how long it should take. So let's just do I don't know, 500 milliseconds. That's about half a second. That is half a second. And then we're going to use the ease function. That means ease in, ease out. And so now you'll see, it's a little bit harder to see over time. Let's do it for 1500. You can see that it doesn't reach its full opacity. Let's change these colors a little bit. What happens if we do blue? There you can see it. And let's change this to something way more drastic. Okay, now you can see how it changes over time. You see how it's taking a long time to get to that opacity. But as soon as we take this off, that change happens instantaneously. You see that? So we're sort of animating it, that transition. Let's not do 0.5, let's do something less drastic, and blue should be fine. We're just for purposes of demonstration here. So you can see that it takes a little bit of time. 1500 seconds is a little bit too much for me. Let's cut that in half. You can see by the time the person reaches, by the time they reach the top and it sticks, we've sort of gotten to our opacity, which is what we want. And then by the time you get all the way scrolled back to the top, you've reached your opacity. So that's the sort of look that we want to go for. And really that's where we are. It only takes this little bit of JavaScript, and all we're doing is saying if the scroll top, when the person scrolls, if the actually let me show you the scroll top. So let's console log that. The scroll top is a number. So let's say window dot scroll top. Scroll top is a number that can be tracked. So when we look at our debugging mode, we'll see here in the console, whenever we begin to scroll, you'll see the numbers get bigger. So that's how far down the page you've scrolled. You've scrolled 118 pixels down the page, and if we go back up, it tracks it again. So every time you scroll, it tracks that number and tells you how far down the page you are. So you could start this action at 5 or 10 or 20 or 40. It doesn't have to necessarily be that you start it if it's greater than 1. So we could say 100, and this is going to be weird, but we could say it at 100. Let's see if we can make it weird. Nope, can't make it weird. Because we're using this position sticky, it's not making it weird, but the element is stuck. But we'll just stick with 0 like that. What we could do is we could change this. I can show you what this looks like. So when the top is 100, then it sticks, which is sort of weird. Let's say minus 100. Does that work? Yeah, it doesn't work. I'm ad-libbing off of what I've done to sort of show you those things, but I've covered sticky elements in other videos, I think, or at least one other video. I had to look that up. But this is how you create a nice little transition, sort of a double layered a header, I guess you would call this. So you have sort of the main stuff up here, but maybe you want to sort of make that minimal as the person goes down the page, and then have it come back up when they get to the top of the page. Hopefully this makes sense to you. Just a little bit of low-level JavaScript in order to make that happen. And really, if you didn't want the opacity, you wouldn't even need the JavaScript. So you could just have your sticky header like this, if you didn't want that to be a little bit translucent. I just wanted to show you that part because that was what I'd seen in this example up here. Alright, if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments section below. If there are other things that you would like to learn, or maybe there's another suggestion that you have for this particular video, leave that in the comment section too. I love to hear from you, and please give it a thumbs up if you like it, and even better would be to share it with your community, or share it on Facebook or Twitter or something, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to the video, just click the subscribe button. I try to do 1 or 2 videos a week when possible. And so if you click subscribe, you'll get a notification on YouTube through the app, or if you choose so, in your inbox, your email inbox, you'll get a notification that I posted a new video. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.